Hello, guys and gals, and welcome back to another episode of Shitpastas. Yes, it's that time of the month again, where we take a look at a shitpasta. Now, this time we only have one. It's kind of lengthier, but we're going to take a look at this one and see what more we can talk about it. It's just so we can focus on this one more so than rather do two and divert focus. Let's just take this one on, and this one is called Xenophilia. It is a Legend of Zelda shitpasta. So, with that being said, sit back, enjoy, relax. Let's dive right into the shittiness of this shitpasta. Really? I should have known better. Legend of Ocarina Rupee Quest sounded like a badly written attempt to work around the copyright of certain famous elf-haired aliens. But I'd always been a sucker for the unusual. I've been looking for the particular hideous piece of work to get a friend as a prank for their birthday, and this looked like about the right speed. The photos on the site I purchased it from feature two sides of a well-maintained cartridge, the sticker all but worn off. At the time, all that really stuck with me is how weirdly pastel the blue skies were. I still wonder about that from time to time. It took me a few minutes to dig out my credit card and enter the numbers for the cards, where I lived, how much I wanted to donate to a charity that looked suspiciously as if the money donated wouldn't be entirely used to build homes for lorn orphans. Somewhere through the process, I decided that I wanted a game. I deserved it, after all. I had a pretty terrible couple days, the usual sob stories, my friend could wait. They hadn't been thinking much of asking me how my days had been, right? When I get angry or sad or feel powerless, sometimes what I do is buy stuff. Sure, it might be shallow and purposeless, but I don't care now, and I didn't care then. The delivery took a few more days than I wanted. The delivery guy prolonged a private postal firm and obviously wanted a tip or something. I sent him off and thought about poking the tires of his stupid van out. Hehe, but was uncomfortable enough just talking to the guy, who was probably a good 10, 20 years older than me, and smelled funny. He was optimistic and had faded tattoos and smelled of cigarette smoke and piney air freshener. He wanted to talk about video games because he was excited to have someone who totally shared his interests. I think it was his enthusiasm that made the most nauseous. When I'd banished the interloper from my domain and retreated to the fortified safety of my inner sanctum, I tore away the fragile wrappings that protected this little sliver of goodness that was his hidden gem of failure. It looked even worse in person. The seller tried to make it look more appetizing by pressing the sticker back on with scotch tape, but that backfired and the cartridge sticker, well, it sagged. I made some noodles a few minutes earlier and they were starting to burn. You recall the weirdest things in retrospect. Blowing on the cartridge, shut up, it totally works, and slotting it in, the first thing that gripped me was that the game, Legend of Ocarina, sold itself as, and the game it was, two different things. As different as strawberry ice cream and strawberry-flavored cough syrup. The title font was written in bloody red, and the game itself had a cinematic feel, characteristic of 32-bit games that wanted to be edgy without getting in trouble with concerned parents. Your main character, creatively titled Sprite by default, woke up in the middle of a rainy haze outside of a house without a bedroll. In the middle of the rain, I guess he was an outdoorer. See, Sprite? Or she. The possibility was there, however unlikely. The sprite was a girl elf, and this game was desperately trying to stand out in one way or another. The loving detail that had gone into the background certainly hadn't gone into character design, that's for sure. There was no story as such. You went around fighting monsters, who exploded into chunks of pixelated gore, the good stuff. Each enemy seemed to be made of highly pressurized red corn syrup, from the way their guts roped out when killed. They dropped jewels, rupees. Was this game trying to be consistent? I doubted, and I collected them. Or rather, Sprite collected them. You eventually tapped out at around 255 rupees, though the counter had room for another cone. Maybe there was a wallet upgrade or something, I stopped caring. There weren't any NPCs to interact with, and I was very aware of how terribly bland the in-game world felt, as if all the design had felt intent on portraying was a killing ground of monsters, rendered with such a loving violence as they could manage for the time. The soundtrack, though, was awesome. All very sultry, jazzy stuff that sounded like it came from a high-class club, the kind where people drink expensive fruit-flavored booze, liquor, and talk about the issues. Whomever had composed it had poured their heart and soul into the soundtrack, and only a few people would ever hear it. I only felt sad for a millisecond, and then I forgot about it because I still hadn't turned the stove off. When I returned, I explored the last area I could find in the short and remarkably limited overworld. What appeared to be a grove with a small wooden dirt castle, Mont Bailey. The word became unbidden. A fragmented memory from an unloved history class. Waiting for me were all these woodland creatures, which ran away as I drew near. Heh, rip off, I thought smugly. As I was patting myself on the back for noticing, I realized Sprite was moving without my input, and not quickly either. Each step was a shallow and methodical labor. Finally, Sprite reached the gates of the castle, and turned to stare at me with impossibly huge, round, sky-blue eyes. I am haunted. I am a ghost. I will destroy everything. Unbidden, I found myself laughing out loud. Streams of snot and half-eaten noodle collided as I stared at the piss-poor attempt, at frightening the player halted. Waiting for input from button A, inappropriately beautiful, tragically beautiful music continued to play. I pressed the button while shaking my head. Go on then, do it. I can watch, right? Destroy everything. The game paused, and I thought I could hear the strain of the system as it calculated a reply. Are you laughing? Why? I don't care about anything, so you can destroy it all. If you're so all-powerful, if you're speaking to someone like me, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you killing something right now? Why aren't you killing me? My lips felt leathery as my tongue slid over them. I couldn't tell for sure, but Sprite seemed hesitant, even a little unnerved. Then again, I was pressed really close to the screen, so maybe the pixels were just a little bit hazy. My breath was fogging things up, that's for sure. You? I'll kill you. Why would you want that? Why would you want this? Sprite toggled back and forth into an approximation of wobbling. Maybe it was supposed to be laughing at me, or maybe it was Shane, some kind of emotion. How could I explain to a video game character the horrible sense of ennui that every day seemed to sustain? All I wanted was something new, something vibrant and alive. Yeah, and I guess I should have been concerned that I was communicating with a fucking video game, but for some reason it never crossed my mind. That's fine, as long as you do something interesting first. Several animals started to gather around the edge of the screen, staring with blank, void eyes at Sprite. Blank, void eyes. I can't. An intense disappointment shot through me as my eyes started drifting to the floor. As if watching a mirror, I noticed that Sprite was making the same gesture, and the animals were drawing closer. They weren't drawn very well, but they looked like pretty realistic animals. The teeth on the deer were long and jagged, an obsidian chrome that seemed to reflect sunlight from the invisible sun. Of course you can't. It was almost a whisper. Some 2-bit ghost from a cartridge I find at an online auction site isn't going to kill me or anyone else. You won't murder my family, or plaster buckets of blood to the wall. The world won't end, and I won't be cursed for the rest of my life. In other words, you're useless. Even more than me. Sprite continued to stare listlessly at badly rendered feet, no longer speaking. Or at least no more text appeared on the screen. A low, plaintive howl drifted from the speakers, low enough that I had to strain my ears to hear it, and wondered if it was almost part of the music. Then the animals dashed toward Sprite and tore into it with their teeth, their antlers, their claws, and their hooves. It was the most well-rendered part of the game, so I guess it was the most interesting part of the game. But it was over as quickly as it started. Nothing more than a cartoony cross-eyed corpse and a blood-red message informing me that I died. As for the game, I sold it a few months back. After all, there isn't too much you can do with a blank cartridge and an imagination alone. What the fuck did I just read? Now, before we begin, I will say the end was both interesting, but also a letdown. It's like watching something, a movie or television show, and finding out it's all just a dream. I mean, cool twist, but it really was a letdown considering nothing was real, or at least real in creepypasta terms. Now, moving on, we can definitely see that the tone is all sarcastic and the protagonist tries to be funny or something, which kills the whole feel. See, creepypastas like Ben Majora's Mask worked because it was all exploratory, and the protagonist sounded like a normal person. Here, the protagonist tries to be too apathetic and whatnot, and then somewhat changes towards the end to be all reflective. It makes no sense, it's just an entire tone shift. Now, moving on, we can see we've got the most sketchiest named game in the world, Legend of Ocarina of Ruby's Quest. I know you guys and gals can totally believe it. And then you have the sketchiest delivery man, who, mind you, likes video games, which is cool. Maybe it's just a description of the way the character describes it, but describes the delivery man rather, but, it's still sketchy. But anyways, the game comes here, And, like any shitpasta game, we've got bloody logos, and then we have some edgy cinematics, which is kind of new. I've seen in creepypastas, I guess. And then audio-wise, instead of not having any audio or not having anything, we've got, some really good music where the heart and soul has been poured into it. So I guess it's kind of a nice shift. And then we have the fact that the creepypasta character Sprite becomes sentient, which is not a new concept in creepypastas. We've seen sentient characters. I mean, if you want to see something, read Console Me. I have a video on it. It's really, really nice, actually, or something. And talks to our protagonist in the most cliched lines in the world. I mean, we had, like, a track mode, and then we've got this. Ugh. And then there was disappointment to the protagonist that mirrored with Sprite. And the ending of all the animals eating and killing Sprite in this beautiful rendered cinematic, which was obviously the most important part, apparently to the main character. I mean, what the hell is going on? And Xenophilia seems like some misleading title. I mean, where was the affection for the unknown? And then to culminate, we sell this empty cartridge and notify that it's just an imagination? I mean, what the hell? This has a nice concept or framework, but was executed all wrong in my opinion. I mean, it has what a gaming creepypasta typically has, but, it doesn't really go anywhere with it. It's great when a, game starts off, normal. Completely normal, but progressively gets even worse as time goes on. Or if it's a game theory pasta, can't believe I use that terminology, that toys with something mysterious in a game, or rather, a common rumor or a myth that is within, real world terms, and it uses that to change things around. Those work, something along those lines. Those frameworks really end up being great creepypastas. It's not because, people are going to copy those frames, because when those frames are done right with, proper games and it's written properly, then it's always really going to be a good creepypasta. As far as, dialogue and behavior go, it should really be rewritten to sound more realistic, and a tone should be established, rather than, go from this sarcasticness to this reflectiveness later on. It just doesn't make any sense. It sort of throws you off entirely. And I think that's really what needs to be done for this shit pasta to not really be a shit pasta. But until then, it's a nonsensical shit pasta with a weird protagonist, I guess. All in all, this is what I think, so please tell me what you think in the comments below. Again, all of our opinions on this creepypasta are different. Some of you may think it's not a shit pasta, some people will. But that's what a shit pasta is. We try to look for a creepypasta that tries to be a creepypasta, but doesn't make it all the way there. All in all, that's what I think. So this has been another episode of Shit Pastas, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I'm out.